Guys, this is Kenny from Learn How to Prosper, and I wanted to take just a minute today to answer a question that I get often, and that is how to be happy. Now, there are two types of happiness, okay? The first is what I call situational, all right? And situational is really characterized by a few, I think, common points. One is it's temporary. Right? So it's a very temporary state, a situational. It's usually self-focused, and so, this little dude, everything's kind of, it's often what I call pleasure-based, and many times this is characterized by addictions. So you have to really ask yourself, is it really happiness? If it is made up of these characteristics. The one that I want to call out is the second one, which is really the most important and the one that we should strive for. It's enduring. Enduring happiness. Okay? Enduring happiness is characterized by its long term, right? I call this joy focused, joy centered, right? And this is external focused, right? External or others, right? So this is where you're looking outside yourself, and this is really the type of joy right here that this is really the type of focus that we want to have. So I want to talk more about enduring happiness. And I want to focus on a couple of these points. External. Really, true happiness comes from looking outside yourself. And it's one of those odd paradoxes of the universe. Because oftentimes we would think that most happiness comes by focusing on ourselves, our own needs, our own wants, our own life. But in reality, to truly feel enduring joy, our focus needs to be outside of ourselves, because it takes our focus off of our own problems and our own issues. And what I've found is by looking outside myself and looking at others and focusing on the value that I can add in their lives, is there are a few important things that happen. Okay? And one of these is that it helps me forget my own problems. Because when we're stuck in our own head and all we can think about our own problems, it makes them super big. But when we focus on others, it makes our problems very small. And oftentimes there's another key thing that comes from looking at other individuals, their interests, their desires, and that is gratitude. Gratitude is extremely important. When we are focused on temporary or situational happiness, oftentimes we get an entitlement mentality, like we're owed something. But when we're looking outside of ourselves, we get focused on what we can contribute to the world. And I think contribution is so important. Contribution is where we grow. And true joy comes from growth, right? if we're stagnated, like in a pond, right? You know, you look at a pond and there's water coming in, but there's no way for water to get out. It just stagnates. It gets algae in there and all kinds of disgusting bugs and creatures. But when you look at a river, right, that can flow free, there's no stagnation, right? It's clear and it's fresh. And that is where true happiness starts to derive from. Okay? So let's talk a minute about this gratitude thing. Gratitude is, at its heart, is really the ability to see things from a whole different perspective. And oftentimes when you're focused on others and recognizing maybe the problems and challenges that others might have in their life, it helps you see your own life in a different perspective. And perspective is very important. If you're on a mountain, you're way up here on the top, okay, you can see everything, right? You can see for miles, and when you look out on the horizon, you know, you can see in a much clearer way where you stand in respect to others. But sometimes we get here in what I call the tall grass, right? And down here, all you can see is just the little things in front of you. You can't see the big picture. And that's what happens when we get so focused in on ourselves, our own problems, our own issues. They become these huge barriers that we can't see beyond. And it makes us rather dull people. No one wants to be around someone that's focused, self-focused. And self-focused people are often pessimistic, they're cynical. Whereas grateful people, truly happy and joyous people, they can see in all directions. They can see all the beauty. They can see all the abundance in the world. And when you can see that abundance and that beauty, then instead of having this feeling that you just want to hold on to things and control them, instead you want to give, right? And you don't get so concerned about the scarcity mindset where only certain people can be happy, and that if you're happy that someone else has to be miserable. And that's absolutely not true. So our focus when we talk about how to be happy is enduring happiness, right? It's joy. Of course, it's long term, right? It's gratitude, right? It's love of others. That's really where true happiness comes from, right? We want to have joy, right? We want to have gratitude and have love in our lives. And so we let go of things, right? We forgive. We contribute. And we're not worried about our reward or what's going to come back to us, because from that high mountain peak up here, we can see that it's an abundant world. So we don't get so concerned about everything coming back to us and getting what's ours and getting our just reward, right? We're focused on the enduring, long-term, more meaningful elements of life. I would avoid situational happiness as any kind of strategy for a real happy life, right? Because if you get very self-focused, then you're going to get into things like addictions, because you can find pleasure in the moment. These drugs are called things like ecstasy, right? Why is it called ecstasy? Because for 13 seconds you can experience some euphoria, but after that you have a massive crash. Same with any of these other drugs. I worked at an inpatient center for addicted individuals, and it was all different types of addictions, and I can tell you there is no life more miserable than an addicted life. And yet they would live from one small moment of temporary happiness to misery to the next temporary moment of happiness, and they would liquidate everything else, all of their friendships, all of their character. Everything that they had was completely tossed aside for that one short temporary peak, right, of euphoria, right? That's what they would just live from one peak, only usually there's a down on the other side, another peak, a huge down, another peak, a huge down, but each one of these was costing them their health, their happiness, their enduring happiness, their joy, their relationships, their gratitude. They were entitled. They felt entitled. And they would literally take anything from anyone to get that temporary little spike of happiness, right? Pleasure, I would call it. And I think that pleasure is really focused on the physical side of us, whereas true joy is focused on the spirit side of us. Like, what makes us really as human beings? It's not this, right? The biology of us. It's the soul. It's the spirit of who we are, right? And so we want to tap into the spirit of who we are and not into the biology of what we are, right? Because we aren't this body. Obviously, this body can pass away, but who we truly are, the essence of us, it endures. And therefore, we should focus this life on things that endure. Love, gratitude, do the harder thing, take the higher path. Those are the things that really, really lead to enduring happiness. So that is how we're happy. Focus outside ourselves. Look at ways to contribute to others. I hope that this was helpful for you. Go ahead and click on the like button or the thumbs up button if this was helpful to you in any way. Otherwise, hope I can see you over on learnhowtoprosper.com. And with that, I'll sign off. Thanks.